Here we are now, part 4, the grand finale of the rise, the fall, and the resurgence of the Warriors dynasty. Now we're at this year, 3 years removed from their last trip to the finals and last playoff appearance, 4 years removed from their last championship. Now finally, this year, we can see the original core for the Warriors suit up together, but this time, Jordan Poole would take a big leap in his development, and Andrew Wiggins would be an even better version of Harrison Barnes. The Warriors also brought back Iguodala, but this time more in a mentor role than anything else. The Warriors are once again NBA champions after 2 down years, including one where they were the worst team in the league. Some say this is the most impressive championship out of the 4. Do I think that this has a case for that? Let's examine. In the NBA draft, the Warriors had 2 lottery picks, one of them being from the Andrew Wiggins D'Angelo Russell trade, so the Warriors took Jonathan Kuminga, aka Cumbuckets, with the 7th pick and Moses Moody with the 14th pick. Both would start a few games but would primarily come off the bench. Jonathan Kuminga would be the leading scorer among those who didn't start the majority of the games they played. It took Kuminga some time to get going, but from February to the end of the season, Kuminga was scoring in double digits on very high efficiency. The Warriors would be without their 2nd overall pick from the previous year though, James Wiseman, for the entirety of the 2021-22 season, as he suffered a torn meniscus in April of 2021 and suffered a setback while rehabbing with the Warriors G League affiliate Santa Cruz Warriors. This allowed Kevon Looney to start 80 out of 82 games. Kevon Looney was the only Warrior to play all 82 games in the 2021-22 season, just for a fun fact, and sometimes availability is the best ability. Again, his numbers don't look amazing, but he was their leading rebounder. Well, rebounding in today's NBA is not what it used to be, but it still counts for something, right? He only led the team with 7.3 per game this year, but in 21 minutes per game, so per 36, that's 12.4. Looney's also a great screen setter, and while that may not show on the box score, that absolutely does matter. Looney has also been a solid rim protector and will even sometimes guard the perimeter players. Although Looney did have some moments in the playoffs where his impact was seen in the box score too, and we'll talk about that when we get to the playoffs. The Warriors do seem to have a thing for second generation NBA players, don't they? They had son of Hall of Famer Gary Payton Jr. for 10 games in 2021 after he signed 2 10-day contracts before signing for the remainder of the season. He was waived shortly before the 2021-22 season but was re-signed after he cleared waivers. This was about to be his last chance in the NBA after having bounced around in the NBA and G League, and the Warriors being his 4th NBA team since having played 6 games for the Milwaukee Bucks in 2017 and not having played more than 29 games in a season at any point in his career. This time, Gary Payton Jr. would have a breakout year, playing 71 games, mostly off the bench. His dad was known as the Glove, and much like his dad, Gary Payton Jr. would stand out on the defensive end. He never became the threat on offense that his dad was, but he made his mark as one of the best perimeter defenders on the team and would be a key piece in the Warriors rotation. The Warriors also brought in former 3rd overall pick Otto Porter Jr. now in his 9th season. He hasn't been a bad player, but definitely not your ideal 3rd overall pick. He would become a key bench piece for the Dubs as well. The Dubs also brought in Nemanja Bjelica to come off the bench, and he had a double-double in his Warriors debut with 15 points and 11 rebounds. Kelly Oubre, who, as said in part 3, was inconsistent, would go to the Charlotte Hornets, and Kent Bazemore, who I haven't talked about much at all, but was in his 2nd stint with the Warriors in 2021, would end up going to the Lakers. I did start to think while editing part 3 of this video, Jordan Poole may have deserved a good chunk of Kelly Oubre's minutes, but now with Oubre in Charlotte and Klay Thompson still not ready to make his return quite yet at the beginning of the season, this is Jordan Poole's chance to break out, and he sure did thrive. So the Warriors went into the season with the 4th highest odds to win the championship. The 2 teams with the highest odds were 2 of the biggest disappointments in NBA history, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk talk about the Warriors' road to their 4th championship in 8 years. Before I do though, if you could please consider taking a second to hit the like button to help out in the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. If you could please consider subscribing and turning on notifications, your support is much appreciated. Links to my social media are down below. Now let's get back to the video. The Warriors were able to start the season 29-9, even with Klay Thompson still recovering from his Achilles tear, with Steph back in MVP form for some time, and the emergence of Jordan Poole, who I think should have won Most Improved Player, no disrespect to Ja Morant. Andrew Wiggins was also becoming a very valuable piece to a contending team for the first time in his career. The reason the Warriors worked so well as a super team and why they're so good now and have been even before the return of Klay Thompson, they have fluidity in their offense and they take pride on defense. How about the Lakers take notes? The Warriors have been extremely fluid with their offense in the Dynasty years, and this year the rebirth of the Dynasty. Their ball movement and off-ball movement is must-watch basketball if you ask me, and I don't usually say that about today's NBA. So about Jordan Poole having his breakout season, besides Klay Thompson still not being available to return yet and Kelly Oubre going to Charlotte, what exactly made Jordan Poole able to break out as a late first-round pick? Back when he was drafted, Bob Myers was impressed with Jordan Poole's work ethic, noticing he's the first one to show up and the last guy to leave. How I mentioned that Andre Iguodala would come back to take on a mentor role, Jordan Poole was perhaps his main mentee. Iggy was there for Jordan Poole every step of the way, and they spent a lot of time together, especially on the road where they dine out together on many occasions. Jordan Poole is also an example of how Steph makes his teammates better, as Jordan Poole did learn a ton from Steph. He has to when he sees Steph go to work right in front of his eyes every day, right? January 9th, aka Klay Day, Klay Thompson made his long-awaited return. It took Klay some time to find some consistency though, as he hasn't played in the last 2 full seasons. Klay Thompson has been a plus defender for much, if not his entire career, and even made the all-defensive second team in 2019, but this year, as expected, after 2 major leg injuries, that part of his game definitely took a hit. Klay did have to load manage a ton throughout the season though, as he made his debut in the 39th game of the season and managed to play in 32 while sitting out 11 since his return. When Klay did play though, it had Jordan Poole sometimes be the 6th man, and because of the kind of team that the Warriors are, Jordan Poole did so without a complaint. By the All-Star break, the Warriors had a 42-17 record, which was the 2nd best behind the Phoenix Suns. They would end up having 2 All-Star starters. Obviously Steph was one, but who else? Andrew Wiggins, once labeled a draft bust, is now starting in his first All-Star game. There was plenty of debate about if Wiggins really deserved it, but nonetheless, he's in, and while his scoring has been down, he has become a lethal 3-point shooter while being more efficient than he ever was in Minnesota, and also playing elite defense. I really do not understand how Andrew Wiggins did not make an all-defensive team this year. The Warriors also had one more All-Star though, making it at least 3 for the first time since 2019. Draymond Green would also join Steph and Wiggins in the All-Star game, and that was Draymond Green's first All-Star game since 2018. Despite the Warriors' success in the first half, this may be forgotten about years from now. Their second half was a little shaky as they had some injuries, such as Steph suffering a sprained ligament in his left foot in March, which kept him out for the remainder of the regular season. Draymond Green missing 31 games from January until mid-March with a lower back injury, and Andre Iguodala missing 31 games from January to April due to back soreness. Andrew Wiggins' numbers also dipped from the All-Star break as he went from 48% from the field and 41% from 3 while scoring nearly 18 points per game before the All-Star break to a little under 16 per game on 42.5% from the field and 34% from 3 after the All-Star break. The Warriors were just 11-12 after the All-Star break, which got them to slip to the 3rd seed in the West and only maintain the 3rd seed by 1 game. They were able to maintain the 3rd seed by winning their last 5 regular season games though. While it was from February to April when Jonathan Kuminga would take advantage of more opportunities as he scored 12.9 points per game in 31 games during that span, he scored 18 in both of the last 2 games. The first of those games, neither Splash Brother played, and Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins shot poorly. In the last game, Klay Thompson did score 41 points and Jordan Poole played much better, scoring 22 points, but there was no Stephen Curry or Andrew Wiggins. So the Warriors finished the season 53-29, which was easily their worst record out of their 4 championships since 2015, but also their best record since 2019. That may not be saying much though. They may have had the best defense in the NBA, but they were just the 17th ranked offense, the lowest ranked offense in a championship season since the 2004 Pistons were ranked 18th. It was also Steph's least efficient season of his career, as he did go through a rough stretch in the 11 games he played after he became the all-time 3-point leader. He did have a few good games in there, including a great one where he scored 46 in a win over the Grizzlies, but he was not as consistent as we've seen him in the past. The Warriors were still 6-5 during that stretch, and I think that's proof that Steph does make his teammates better. Despite the Warriors' offensive struggles in the regular season, their offense would be a lot better in the playoffs, as their offensive rating was 3 points higher in the playoffs. The Warriors' first round matchup would be against the 6th seeded Denver Nuggets, led by MVP Nikola Jokic. If Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic won MVPs as the 6th seed, then Kobe was absolutely robbed in 2006. Steph made his return in game 1, but off the bench. Who would have imagined someone with Stephen Curry's resume coming off the bench, right? He didn't whine about it because that's not what the Warriors are about. Steph only went 5 for 13 in game 1, but behind Jordan Poole's 30-point playoff debut, the Warriors won game 1 123-107. Game 2, Steph was much better coming off the bench, scoring 34. The Warriors did take a 3-0 lead, but after the Nuggets won game 4, Steph was back in the starting lineup as the Warriors put the Nuggets away in game 5 behind Steph's 30 points. Klay Thompson also seemed to have found his rhythm as he scored 22.6 points per game while shooting 50% from the field and 46% from 3 while playing 34.5 minutes per game. In the next round, the Warriors would face Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies and Warriors split the first 2 games. Despite starting 51 games in the regular season, Jordan Poole would never start another game for the Warriors during their playoff run, but as the Warriors have always been since Andre Iguodala accepted a bench role before the 2014-15 season, Jordan Poole handled it like a pro. The Warriors would face adversity by losing Gary Payton Jr. after he fractured his elbow. However, the Grizzlies would face even bigger adversity as they lost Ja Morant in the very next game for the remainder of the playoffs, as the Warriors went on to win in 6 games and get back to the conference finals. This time around against the 4th best defense in the league, the Splash Brothers were much less efficient, but they got the job done. You know what else I want to point out, since the Warriors have always been well known for the 3-ball? They shot less threes than the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies made a much higher percentage, but did that matter? No, it didn't. I'm not saying threes are a bad thing, but I want to make sure people watching this realize that no matter what era it is, you don't have to outshoot the other team from 3, even in this space and pace era. I also want to mention that in game 6, even though Kevon Looney only scored 4 points, he had 22 rebounds, which did help the Warriors out-rebound the Grizzlies 70-44 in the deciding game. Next, the reigning Western Conference champion Phoenix Suns, who had the best record in the NBA? Nope, the Dallas Mavericks upset them and were back in the conference finals for the first time since their 2011 championship run. Game 1, the Warriors absolutely smoked the Mavericks as Luka Doncic was held to just 6-18 with 7 turnovers. The Warriors are still a team that moves the ball and moves without the ball. The Mavs may have had a huge defensive turnaround under new coach Jason Kidd, who was an elite defensive player when he played, but their heliocentric offense was just doomed against the Warriors. What else was also exposed in the playoffs is that while Mikal Bridges was an all-defensive first-team member, he also didn't have to guard the post as much in the regular season because not many guys post up anymore. Luka does though, and Mikal Bridges just doesn't have the lower body strength to handle it. However, Andrew Wiggins does. Wiggins may have a skinny frame at 6'7", not even 200 pounds. However, he is a lot stronger than he looks, and he would use this to his advantage to slow down Luka Doncic in the conference finals. Luka would score 42 the following game, but the second and third quarter is when he really struggled, and although he scored 14 fourth quarter points, he was 1 for his last 4, while Jordan Poole and Stephen Curry scored 12 and 10 points respectively in the fourth quarter, while Otto Porter Jr. even added 7 off the bench for the Warriors to outscore the Mavs 43-32 in the fourth quarter to win Game 2 126-117. Kevon Looney was once again an unsung hero in Game 2, putting up 21 points and 12 rebounds in Game 2. Game 3, Luka had another 40-point game, but it was once again the second and third quarters where he really got clamped. The Warriors would take a 3-0 lead behind Steph's 31, Wiggins 27, and Klay's 19. Andrew Wiggins also did this. The Mavs did avoid a sweep in Game 4, but Game 5, with Luka having a disastrous first half, going 2 for 12 with 3 turnovers, he did a lot better in the second half, scoring 22 on 8 of 16 with just 1 turnover, but the damage was already done in the first half. And despite Steph going 5 for 17, the Warriors earned their trip back to the NBA Finals behind Klay Thompson's 32 points. 6 Warriors scored in double digits in Game 5. Those 5 being the entire starting 5 and Jordan Poole. I would also like to note that Kevon Looney not only scored 10 points, he also had 18 rebounds. Now with the newly implemented Conference Finals MVP award, Stephen Curry would be the Conference Finals MVP after he averaged 23.8 points, 7.4 assists, and 6.6 rebounds per game, while shooting 44% from the field and almost 44% from 3. Now once again, another thing I'd like to point out about this series, and I remember saying this as the series went on, no matter what era it is, even in this space and pace era, not everything needs to be a 3, and not even for the Warriors. The Mavericks shot 222 threes, they made 82 of them, which is almost 37%, and that is pretty solid. However, the Warriors shooting only 153 of them while making 59 of them, that's 38.6%. They also outscored the Mavericks 246-164 in the paint in these 5 games, and that most certainly did wonders for the Warriors. Even a team that's known for 3-point shooting has ways outside of the 3 ball to beat you, and that's something that I really think needs to be noticed so teams don't live and die by the 3. The Warriors may have been a lethal shooting team since the beginning of the Splash Brothers, but they never lived and died by the 3. The Mavericks did just that, even while not even being one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the regular season. So now the Warriors are going against the Boston Celtics in the finals, who are back for the first time since 2010 and are trying to regain the lead over the Los Angeles Lakers for most championships in NBA history, and were able to go from 18-21 on January 6th to finishing the season 51-31. So now it would be a battle of the 2 best defenses in the NBA. And speaking of defense, Marcus Smart became the first guard since Gary Payton to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he also became the first guard to win the award in the post-hand checking era, so I think that's very impressive to be able to do. If only on offense his shot selection was any better. So the Celtics would throw the first punch despite their star player Jason Tatum shooting 3 for 17, not even a good batting average, but with Al Horford having a redemption tour of his own, scoring 26 points, and Jaylen Brown scoring 24. The Warriors did get Gary Payton Jr. back for Game 2 though, and the Warriors did win Game 2 convincingly behind Steph's 29 points. However, the Celtics took a 2-1 lead despite Steph's 31, Klay's 25, and Wiggins' 18, and now with the Celtics having home court advantage, the Warriors seemed doomed. It also seemed like Draymond Green was more focused on his upcoming podcast than he was on the NBA Finals. I don't know Draymond, so I can't speak for him, but he sure stunk it up in games 1 and 3. The Warriors have overcome adversity before. They were not about to let up this time, even while Draymond was still 1 for 7 in game 4. I'll talk about that as well in a moment. The Warriors won the next 3 games, all by double digits, and reclaimed the NBA championship as Stephen Curry was finally, for the first time in his career, named Finals MVP after averaging 31.2 points per game on 48% from the field and 43.7% from 3, with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals per game. This was absolutely huge for his legacy, and many, including myself, would say that you can definitely argue that this cemented his place as the second greatest point guard ever, only behind Magic Johnson. Although, as said in a video I made before I started this Warriors Dynasty series, I wouldn't consider you crazy if you still think Isaiah Thomas, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, or Walt Frazier still can be placed above Steph. It is subjective, but I still lean more towards Steph being the second greatest point guard of all time. I only will call you crazy if you think anyone other than Magic Johnson is the greatest point guard of all time. Also, Draymond Green actually stepped up in games 5 and 6. He still only scored in single digits in game 5, 8 points to be exact, and fouled out, but at least he wasn't a brick machine for once, and in game 6, he had a double-double of 12 points and 12 rebounds with 8 assists. He was even 2 for 5 from 3 in game 6. Even in those games I say he stunk it up, like game 1, he did have 11 rebounds, but he still didn't help his team by going 2 for 12 and committing 3 turnovers, but in the end, he did end up becoming a 4-time champion. Even that game 4 where Draymond was 1 for 7, the box score doesn't tell the whole story. Draymond still made plays that won't show in the box score with his help defense. Even things that do show in the box score, that he was able to contribute in game 4, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and 4 steals. This time the Warriors did actually shoot more threes than the Celtics did, while the Celtics made a better percentage of their threes. I still think the Celtics over-relied on the 3, and when the 3 didn't fall, they got stagnant. The Warriors shot better from the free throw line though, and took better care of the ball as they had 79 turnovers in those 6 games, while the Celtics had 97. Usually the team that wins the rebounding battle should win, right? For the series, the Celtics won that, but the Warriors did when it mattered most in games 4 and 6. The Warriors also made an adjustment after being down 2-1 by starting Otto Porter Jr. over Kevon Looney, although Looney still played more minutes. Jason Tatum also happened to struggle really badly in this series, shooting just 36.7% from the field with nearly 4 turnovers per game, and much credit to Andrew Wiggins, who was the primary defender. The guy who was once thought of as a lost cause on defense held down the Celtics' best player in the finals. Kevon Looney and Draymond Green also deserve some credit too for their help defense when Tatum was trying to get to the basket. Even Nemanja Bjelica played a role in stopping Jason Tatum in the 9 minutes he played in game 4, but most of the credit for Tatum's struggles goes to Andrew Wiggins. So the Warriors not only had a rebirth in their dynasty, they also turned Andrew Wiggins' career back in the right direction from disappointment and to some even a bust to a vital piece to a championship team. Got Gary Payton Jr. to have a breakout year at age 29, just as his career looked like it was as good as done, and now he's earned himself $28 million over the next 3 years in Portland. And Toscano-Anderson, a guy who was undrafted, didn't even stand out in college, and spent some years overseas into a champion. For Jordan Poole to score 18.5 points per game during the regular season and 17 per game while strictly coming off the bench in the playoffs when he was a late first-round pick. Klay Thompson to be able to overcome the ACL and Achilles tear to be the second leading scorer on a championship team again. The Warriors management deserve a ton of praise. Jerry West may have gone to the Clippers front office after the 2017 championship, so he wasn't there anymore to give a helping hand after that. Still though, Bob Myers built a championship team without Jerry West, and Joe Lacob and Peter Guber have to be the best owners in recent memory. Steve Kerr also most certainly made a fool out of everyone everyone who turned on him in the last 2 seasons. The Warriors can also thank the Minnesota Timberwolves for the fact that they drafted Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio over Stephen Curry, traded them Andrew Wiggins, and also with the second pick in the 2011 draft, drafting Derek Williams instead of Klay Thompson. You know what else is pretty special about this championship for the Warriors? They did something that only the 1985 Los Angeles Lakers have ever done, which is win a championship on the Celtics' home floor. Although this year's Warriors were definitely the worst out of the 4 championship teams since 2015 and was obviously worse than the 2016 team that blew a 3-1 lead, considering many people thought the Warriors would never get back to the championship and had to go through a couple tough seasons, including a horrible one in 2020, I think that it's very safe to say that this is the most impressive one out of the 4, and my friends who are Warriors fans have told me that this one was their favorite out of the 4. This is also something I said after the Celtics swept the net, and I think it became even more evident after the finals, is that Kevin Durant needed the Warriors far more than the Warriors needed Kevin Durant. This is not to say the Warriors didn't need KD at all, because I do also think that if KD was healthy in the 2019 finals, the Warriors would have three-peated. But he did join a team that was already established before he arrived. They won both before he arrived and after he left. If there is anything that taints this ring, perhaps the Clippers not having Kawhi Leonard all season long and the Grizzlies being without Ja Morant for much of that second round series. But once again, like I said in part 2, we can play this game all day for if this guy or that guy were healthy, and the Warriors had their share of injuries too during the season. At the ESPYs, something I never talked about in previous parts of the series, but I may as well talk about it now, Stephen Curry took home 2 awards: Best Record-Breaking Performance by breaking the all-time 3-point record and Best NBA Player, while Klay Thompson took home Best Comeback Athlete. The rest of the team got an ESPY too because the Warriors won Best Team. So that is all for part 4 of this series. If you made it this far, you're awesome. If you could please consider liking the video for the algorithm, subscribing, and turning on notifications if you haven't yet. Your support is much appreciated. Links to my social media are down below. Please let me know in the comments which of the 4 championships you think was most impressive, or if you just want to comment anything I missed or just speak on how I presented this, I'd love to hear from you on that as well. Or tell me if you think the Warriors can make it 5 and 9 years next year or not. No Gary Payton Jr., Otto Porter Jr., Juan Toscano-Anderson, or Nemanja Bjelica, but they did also get Dante DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green as bench pieces. Here's parts 1 through 3 in the end screen if you decide to watch this before those. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. Baseball content on the way now, and my Yankees better get it together because I'm much less excited to talk about them now than I was earlier. Football season's coming up too. Hope you guys stay tuned for that. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.